Hi, I'm very pleased to be speaking with you today about music and literature, a subject that is very close to my heart. It's been at the center of a lot of my work, both as a concert pianist and artistic director of DACAMERA, and in my own writings. And we're going to be focusing on a rather recent project of mine, which is called From the Diary of Virginia Woolf. And it focuses on a musical setting by the composer Dominick Argento, an American composer who wrote this work in 1974 and based it on excerpts of the diaries of the great British writer Virginia Woolf. And one of the reasons I thought this would be particularly appropriate to do now is the idea of the diary, a journal, writing that is meant to be very intimate, not necessarily ever meant for a public. And as we are all at home more than usual due to the COVID-19 crisis, cut off in a lot of ways from much of our social activities and things that would take us out of the house. It's a time when journal writing, diary writing, might be a very good thing to try if you never have. People may think, well, if nothing's going on in my life, what am I going to write about? And what's interesting about journals, and we will see in the way the great writer Virginia Woolf used her own journal writing, is it's a time to really reflect on what's going on inside, the interior life. And I think now more than ever, many of us can see that an outside life can be very, very calm, but the inside life can be quite turbulent. And writing in journals is a way for people to figure out what's going on inside of them. So today we're going to be looking at this musical work by Dominick Argento in a staging that I did for DACAMERA in this past season with the wonderful Metropolitan Opera mezzo soprano Jennifer Johnson Cano, and I'm playing piano in it. But I thought before we get to the music, perhaps it would be good to look a little bit at the life of Virginia Woolf before we hear from her very intimate diary. Born in Victorian England in 1882, Virginia Woolf grew up in an intellectual family dominated by her father, Leslie Stevens, who was to have a major influence on her development. The sudden death of Virginia's mother when she was 13, followed rapidly by the shocking death of her stepsister, who had taken on a maternal role, were tragedies that would mark her forever. Writing became a psychological outlet for the young Virginia, an activity through which she found herself and gained a sense of control. She later wrote, "A shock is at once, in my case, followed by a desire to explain it. I make it real by putting it into words. It is only in putting it into words that I make it whole. This wholeness means that it has lost its power to hurt me." Virginia Woolf developed a highly individual writing style marked by deep introspection and poetic musicality. Her capture of internal monologues evolved into groundbreaking novelistic forms, defining her as a leading literary figure of the 20th century with such novels as Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, and The Waves. Along with her sister, the painter Vanessa Bell, to whom she was extremely close, Virginia Woolf was at the center of the nonconformist and influential Bloomsbury Group, a remarkable circle of brilliant thinkers, writers, and artists in London. Beyond their intellectual and artistic achievements, Bloomsbury was associated with a freely individualistic approach to life, and open, unconventional relationships existed among the group in stark contrast to the strict Victorian mores into which the generation had been born. The 7 diary entries that we hear in Dominick Argento's musical settings trace moments in Virginia Woolf's fragile yet productive creative life from 1919 to 1941. Argento crafted the libretto for the cycle himself from the multiple volumes of diaries edited by Virginia Woolf's husband, Leonard Woolf. Candid and questioning, we hear the writer in her most private musings about how to write, how to live. She searches in her diaries for a voice and a place in the world, and we sense her growing anxiety as the war continues without end. In December 1940, she offers a beautiful remembrance of her parents. The last entry, movingly matter-of-fact, dwells on the craft of writing, of turning personal despondency into something serviceable, closing with the comfort of such daily rituals as dinner. I think it is true, she writes, that one gains a certain hold on sausage and haddock by writing them down. Virginia Woolf's intense life was one of psychic struggle. The psychological fragility exhibited by Virginia at an early age continued in her adult life, with productive periods alternating with deep despair. In 1941, as World War II raged and her pessimism became intolerable, Virginia Woolf brought her life to an end. Her journal entries include writing of great beauty and are, in themselves, a literary masterpiece. These musical settings bring us remarkably close to a sensitive and original woman of genius. Now let's go to the Diary of Virginia Woolf. Dominick Argento chose to start this work with a diary entry that comes from April 1919. And it begins, "What sort of diary should I like mine to be? Something so elastic that it will embrace anything, solemn, slight, or beautiful, that comes into my mind." So now what's going to happen when we put music to these rather simple words? We're going to listen to this first movement from this performance with Jennifer Johnson Cano and myself. I want you to listen for a few things. First is this starts with a question, as though she's talking to herself. That's who she's asking the question to. What sort of diary should I like mine to be? But we don't start with that question. We start with a musical introduction. And the musical introduction, in a way, creates the space for thought. It's a kind of musical representation of thought, of someone sitting with an open book and just thinking. And you'll hear in this piano introduction, which is extremely lyrical, a wandering theme in the piano right hand, as though one's thoughts are actually wandering. And after she asks the question, the singer comes in and sings, "What sort of diary should I like mine to be?" We don't immediately go to the answer either. The piano continues to grow without the voice, as though the thought itself is growing. So we see this interaction, I would say, between words and music, where the nonverbal music of the piano itself, without the singer, also is creating the thought behind the words and creating an atmosphere. And the atmosphere is one of deep introspection, which was very much the mood of Virginia Woolf. I mean, she was an extremely introspective writer, but she's in very much this contemplative mood, which is not always the case in this very first entry. So let's listen to this. It's the first movement from Dominick Argento's From the Diary of Virginia Woolf. I think it's a very beautiful setting. I hope that you felt how the music kind of expands what looks quite simple at first on the page and brings the emotion behind the words to the forefront through the music. At the end of that setting, you can hear that piano line returns. It goes in and out, weaves in and out, the kind of contemplative introspection of that melody that opens. It comes at the end as well, high, to kind of reflect high register-wise, this idea of light, as she ends with the line, to reflect the light of our life. And that winding theme then becomes both a beginning that started this movement and an end as well. And it seems to create, in this enclosed sense of opening and closing with that same thematic material, a kind of safe space, almost a cozy contemplative space in which Virginia is writing in her diary. Now, the next song is quite different. It's from about a year later, October 1920, a little more than a year, I guess. And it's called Anxiety. Of course, the diary didn't have a title, but Dominick Argento, the composer, gave this title to this segment. And this entry is very, very different in mood. One of the aspects of what really was an illness for Virginia Woolf, a mental illness, where her emotions would be of such extremes and then would get completely out of control. And often it was her anxiety that got out of control. So in this diary entry, she is feeling anxious. And again, this opens with a question: why is life so tragic? So like a little strip of pavement over an abyss. I look down, I feel giddy. I wonder how I am ever to walk to the end. And she closes with this confession, and with it all, how happy I am, if it weren't for my feeling that it's a strip of pavement over an abyss. So it's the fragility of that happiness, which almost gives her a kind of vertigo, she talks about, this feeling of being giddy. So what happens? How do you put music to this and illustrate in a way, but bring to life, I think of it, the meaning behind this text. So in music, we have a number of things to use. We have tempo, which is how fast or slow something is. We have rhythm. We have a dynamic range, and we also have the range of low notes to high notes, which, especially for vocal music, is something which has tremendous drama to it, as drama grows, as her voice goes higher, and you're reaching for these high notes. We certainly have dynamics, which is playing very loud and playing very soft. And then texture. And texture becomes extremely visible, tangible, in the shift from this first song, The Diary, to the second song, Anxiety. And this time, there's not a long piano introduction. We jump right in, and you'll hear immediately how the tempo is quick, and the texture of the piano is percussive, almost like hitting a percussion instrument, hammering away. And rhythmically, there's tremendous tension and agitation going on with syncopated rhythms where the singer is sometimes singing against the rhythm of the piano, which is difficult, and you feel that difficulty. And there's even a breathless quality, as though she can't quite catch up to the emotional state that she's in. So now let's listen to this. It's the second movement by Dominick Argento from his work from the Diary of Virginia Woolf. And again, it's Jennifer Johnson Cano, mezzo-soprano, and myself at the piano.
Why is life so tragic? Why? So like a little strip of pavement over an abyss. I look down, I feel giddy.
Now we've listened and watched the first two songs of the cycle. We don't have time to do all of them, and I'm going to skip a few now, but we will be posting the full performance. So those of you who are interested, you can watch the entire performance straight through after this presentation. So we're going to skip over some diary entries from 1927, 1928, a lovely one about being in Rome in 1935 and just enjoying the sun and Italy and sitting in a cafe and observing the people around one. And we're going to jump to June 1940, which is an entry that Virginia Woolf wrote in her diary during the war, during World War II. And this is what she writes. This, I thought yesterday, may be my last walk. The war, our waiting, while the knives sharpen for the operation. The war has taken away the outer wall of security. No echo comes back. Now, this goes on, and we don't have time to listen to all of this movement, so we'll listen to just this part. This time, we just have the voice in the beginning. And so you have a very strong sense of aloneness and of not knowing what's around you. So the security, the foundation that's usually underneath the singer, the piano, that support is no longer there. And she's all alone. Now, I haven't talked at all about the staging that I created for this, which is rather simple for the most part, but the lighting is so beautifully done. And here, of course, we start in complete darkness. And there's a sense you don't know where things are coming from. You don't see the ground that you're walking on. And you're just feeling extremely insecure, as one does during a war, or for that matter, when you're in a crisis and the world around you is not as reassuring as perhaps it sometimes is. And there's a certain reassuring quality sometimes in things just being stable, and that's certainly not the case in this song. So what else? So how does the sense of aloneness, first it's brought out by the voice being alone. And then when the piano does come in, it's kind of with rather unpredictable interjections. It's not always there. It's not there when you might think it would be. And then suddenly it is there. So a little bit like gunshots in the night or explosions going on. And some of that, although it's done quite subtly in both the music and I think what we did visually with the lighting, it's that sense of random events happening around one. The other thing is the repetition of text, right? In the diary, Virginia Woolf writes these things once. But in the musical settings, quite often Dominick Argento will decide to either repeat a word or repeat an entire phrase. And this opening line, this I thought yesterday may be my last walk. We hear that several times because it's a thought that does not leave one easily. It's a disturbing thought, and it's turning in her head, and we hear it more than once. And then the line, no echo comes back. Well, no echo comes back means you only hear something once, but he does the opposite here. He sets the line more than once, almost testing whether there's an echo or creating an echo. And the second time he sets the line, no echo comes back, he uses what we call in music melisma, which means rather than one note for each word, as in something like happy birthday to you, right? He extends one word or one syllable with a big musical line. So it becomes extremely expressive and wild and almost out of control. But the sense of this thought, no echo comes back, and the largeness of it, the musical expressivity that comes from the way the melisma, the way just one syllable encompasses a wide vocal range, a virtuosic vocal range, is quite chilling. So we're just going to listen to the beginning, the first part of this song, which is called War, and comes from a diary entry from June 1940.
This I thought yesterday may be my last walk. This I thought yesterday may be my last walk. This I thought yesterday. The war, waiting while the knives sharpen for the operation. The war, has taken away the outer wall of security. No echo comes back. No echo comes back.
There are two more songs to this cycle, which we won't have time for now. There's one called Parents, which is a very, very beautiful look of Virginia Woolf back at her parents, how beautiful they were, those old people. I mean, father and mother. How simple, how clear, how untroubled. Looking very much with the view of a child. And a child who lost her mother when she was so young. Dominick Argento finds this beautiful, nostalgic, innocent, very, very beautiful approach to this text. And then what was actually Virginia Woolf's very last entry in her diary in March of 1941. Where you feel the struggle and you feel her also grabbing onto writing as being an anchor in her life and something that gives her, as we said so much earlier, a sense of having some control over what's going on around her and what's going on inside of her. So thank you so much for spending this time with me, with Virginia Woolf, and with the music of Dominick Argento. And I hope you'll watch the entire performance after this. Thank you.